I think with that, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Good.
Oh, I have too many tabs open. Oh my goodness. All right, so we're starting on chapter 25. After this, we are 3 chapters away to the end. Holy mackerel. Yep, and we catch up where we last left Paul. He is in custody in Caesarea. He was before Felix, the governor. And Felix is hoping that he can get some kind of bribe or some kind of monetary gain from all this. But such is not the case, of course. So now, like I said, we are starting in chapter 25, and Felix is no longer the governor now, as we were told in the last verse of chapter 24. After 2 years after Paul was before Felix, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. So that is who is in charge now in Caesarea. It is not Felix, it is Festus. Yep, so we start on verse 1 of chapter 25. Now, 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea. And the chief priests and the principal men of the Jews laid out their case against Paul, and they urged him, asking as a favor against Paul, that he summon him to Jerusalem, because they were planning an ambush to kill him on the way. Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea, and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So, he said, let the men of authority among you go down with me. And if there is anything wrong about the man, let them bring charges against him. All right. And then after he stayed among them not more than 8 or 10 days, he went down to Caesarea. So we'll pause there for just a second. So this is the second time that Paul's Jewish opponents, words are hard. So this is the second time that Paul's Jewish opponents want favor with a Roman leader. Yeah, so we talked about this in chapter, I did not do the good thing of reminding myself on paper about this. They did this back in, you recall, in chapter 23, when the Jews made a plot. They made that plot and that oath to not eat or drink until Paul was dead. And they wanted to get the tribune to go along with their idea of having Paul moved so that they could ambush and kill Paul right there. That's kind of the same thing of what's going on here, what they're trying to get at with Festus. So that's why I say that this is the second time that Paul's Jewish opponents want favor with a Roman leader. And then I kind of already hinted at something else for the second time that these Jewish leaders against Paul want, and that is they have a plot to ambush and kill Paul. So that's the other thing that they've got going for them right there.
So they previously had wanted to take his life at another location or another time.
Right. Yeah, because if you recall back in chapter 23, when they were thinking of moving Paul from Jerusalem, well, not even before he was going to go to Caesarea, but they were just going to have Paul come out of the barracks by the tribune to the temple, and they would ambush him on the way there and kill him right there. So that's kind of the same thing of what's going on right here, is that they want him to come back to Jerusalem from Caesarea so that they could ambush and kill him.
I see.
Yep. Hello, Pastor Ehlers.
Hi.
Hey, welcome.
I'm getting a new computer Monday, and I can't wait.
That's awesome.
Good luck.
Yep, so we started the first 5 and a bit of the 6th verse of chapter 25, Pastor. I just discussed how this is the second time that Paul's Jewish opponents want favor with a Roman leader. They want him on their side so that they can go through with their plot to ambush and kill Paul on the way from Caesarea to Jerusalem. However, Festus, who is now the governor in this region, will not go along with this. He is going to keep Paul in Caesarea. He does want the Jewish leaders to go with him to Caesarea so that they can lay their accusations in Paul's face. If you recall, the last chapter, I believe it was either chapter 24 or 23, I don't remember which. Some of this is starting to kind of blend together just with all the different activity that's going on. But Paul reminded the leaders that because of Roman law, it was not good for the accusers to not be present and lay their accusations right there at the trial. That's a thing that they had in those days, was that the accusers must be there to give their accusations to the face of the accused. So that's what Festus is leading at here, is that he wants these Jewish leaders to go with him to Caesarea so that Paul can be tried properly. And it makes sense that Festus is going into Jerusalem at all, because the region that he's governor at, Jerusalem, is a prominent city within his region. So it makes sense that and it also shows that there must be some urgency in Paul's case for him to be going to Jerusalem. All right. Any questions or comments about that?
No?
So starting over at the top of verse 6, and after he stayed among them not more than 8 or 10 days, he, of course, he being Festus, went down to Caesarea. And the next day he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. When he had arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him that they could not prove. Paul argued in his defense, "Neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense." But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, "Do you wish to go up to Jerusalem and there be tried on these charges before me?" But Paul said, "I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you yourself know very well. If then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar." Then Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, "To Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go." So Paul is recognizing here pretty easily, which of course it's not that hard to realize, that the Jews really don't have any good
case against him.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no good case against him. Not a lot of evidence here either. But yeah, so then you notice in verse 9 how Festus is wishing to do the Jews a favor, and that's when he asked Paul if he'd rather go to Jerusalem and be tried. So it seems like that Festus is starting to go on the side of the Jews. But as Paul is so eager and willing to do, he once again just demonstrates his knowledge of Roman law by showing that going before Festus would be just as if he were before Caesar. That's what, in verse 10, that's what he's saying here when he says, "I am standing before Caesar's tribunal where I ought to be tried." A tribunal, that is the seat where the judge sits at, basically, in those days. So that's the seat of judgment. So basically he's saying, I am already standing here before the judgment seat of Caesar. I am where I need to be in order to be prosecuted if I need to be. So then Paul ultimately requests, he realized that he is willing to be put to death for any charges that Roman law would require him to be put to death for. He says that there's nothing in the Jewish law that he has done wrong, but whatever he may be found guilty of under Roman law, he's willing to die for that. And then he goes even further and he says that he wants his case heard in Rome. So basically, he is asking for something he was asking for chapters ago. Because you remember, this was his goal along his missionary journeys, was he was wanting to get to Rome. Now he is asking to get there kind of in a different way. And of course, as we read in the last part of verse 12 there, Festus says, to Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go. So yes, it is granted to him that he will go before Caesar. Any questions or comments thus far on that?
Mm-mm.
So his adversaries couldn't bring forth any witnesses or evidence of any kind against him?
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They were not able to bring up any credible evidence or charges against him. Yeah. And something that kind of interesting for those of us who are pretty big into history, especially into church history, the emperor, the Caesar that is being referenced to in this chapter, this is Nero. This is most likely Nero that they are talking about here. I got the dates from 54 to 68 AD.
Okay.
And he does have some history with Christianity. Like I say here, it's not very good. He is the emperor that is reigning when Paul and Peter are ultimately martyred.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was trying to remember as I was going through all this, and I wasn't able to find anything else, but Pastor, was he the one that was kind of the ringleader of some of the worst persecution of the Christians at this point?
Well, I see your question here, and I'm not really sure what the answer to that is. You said it's not good.
Right. Well, because I was saying that he was the emperor reigning when Paul and Peter are martyred. But
He had the same position that Pontius Pilate did at the time of Jesus' trial. And I don't know what history does he have with Christianity. Is there a particular verse we should be looking at?
well, I was referring to Nero, who was the emperor of Rome.
Oh, you're talking about Nero.
Yeah, this question I'm referring to Nero. Yeah, I'm not talking about Festus anymore. I'm
I thought
sorry.
you were talking about Festus. Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, Rome had a terrible fire at one time. And many people, historically think that he's the one that set it for some kind of domestic political reason, but he blamed the Christians for it.
That's
And
right.
that was the beginning of a lot of extreme persecution of the Christians, because they were blamed for the fire that devastated Rome, because that's whom he blamed, and so that's what everybody believed.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I had completely forgotten about that, but I knew he was responsible in some way for some of the worst persecution of Christianity. Yeah, so thank you so much for helping me with that.
Yeah, he wasn't the only one. There were emperors that followed him
Right.
that also persecuted the Christians, but his name always comes to the top as one of the worst, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. So then, so moving on now, Paul goes before another leader, albeit one not quite as powerful as Festus, and certainly not as powerful as Caesar. Verse 13. Now when some days had passed, Agrippa the king and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and greeted Festus. And they stayed there many days. Festus laid Paul's case before the king. I'm going to stop there for just a brief second. So, do you all, any of you remember who is Agrippa, the king that we are referencing here in chapter 25, verse 13? Who is he related to? I'm picking your brains.
I forgot.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Some woman?
Hmm?
Some woman? No.
You're close. You're close.
Well, then it's a guy.
Yeah, well, yeah. But see the note that I've got there, chapter 12 of Acts.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Well,
Mhm. Verse 1 of chapter 12.
Oh, verse 1. Herod.
Right away, responsible for what happens to the apostles in chapter 12.
Oh, he killed James and John. Oh, brother of John.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was
Yep. The name
Herod.
that's
Herod. Okay.
Yep, Herod Agrippa the First. That is who is being referenced here. Well, that is, well, not here in chapter 25, because at the end of chapter 12, Herod Agrippa, it dies on the spot. But this is Herod Agrippa the Second that Festus is meeting with here. And interesting, Bernice, that is talked about here, she just, I don't think she says anything, but she's just mentioned off and on in this section. According to the Lutheran Study Bible, the notes that are down here for the Lutheran Study Bible, Bernice is Agrippa's sister. They were involved in an incestuous relationship.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Kind of noticing a pattern here with the Herod family here.
They're sick.
Yep. Yeah. And yep. Yeah, so that is, so just some reference here about who we're talking about when we mention King Agrippa the king. That is the son of Herod Agrippa mentioned in chapter 12 of Acts.
Okay.
my Bible even says to silence the rumors she was living in incest with her brother, she married the king of Sicily, but left him soon to return to Agrippa. Huh.
That doesn't
Did anybody watch WLL over the weekend? No, it wasn't on it was on CNN. They had a special the other night about Jerusalem, and it featured Herod. Now, there were a lot of different Herods, and I'm not sure which one it was, but they told about how cruel this particular Herod was. He actually had his wife murdered and some of his sons murdered because he feared that they were plotting against him to take his power away.
Remember that.
right.
He was one bad dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that. Oh goodness. I remember hearing about that. I think that was the Herod that was king when he put John the Baptizer to death. I think.
That could
Don't
be.
quote me on that. I'll have to look back again. But I think that's the King Herod that we heard referenced a few Sundays ago when John the Baptizer was put to death. Like I said, don't quote me
Yeah.
on
Because
that.
he married his sister, right? His own sister.
That Herod married his brother's wife,
That was it.
Herodias, and that's how that whole thing started with John the Baptizer.
Got it.
Yep.
The Lutheran Study Bible has a chart. I don't have it in front of me here, but it has a chart on the whole Herod family tree.
Okay.
And we're mostly acquainted with the Herod when Jesus was born.
Right.
But there were other Herods as well who were over certain parts of the country. And it's hard to keep straight, but there is a chart in the Lutheran Study Bible that kind of clarifies that.
Okay. Interesting.
I have to look for that.
Yeah, I'll have to go through mine and check that out. I appreciate that. Yep. All right. So picking up in middle of verse 14, Agrippa and Bernice are staying there many days. Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, "There's a man left prisoner by Felix. And when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews laid out their case against him, asking for a sentence of condemnation against him. Excuse me. I answered them that it was not the custom of the Romans to give up anyone before the accused met the accusers face to face and had opportunity to make his defense concerning the charge laid against him." This is what Paul mentioned a chapter or two ago. And this is what we talked about earlier, the accusers bringing the charges face to face. Verse 17. So when they came together here, I made no delay, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. When the accuser stood up, they brought no charge in his case of such evils as I supposed. Rather, they had certain points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who was dead, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Being at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there regarding them. But when Paul had appealed to be kept in custody for the decision of the emperor, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said to Festus, "I would like to hear the man myself." "Tomorrow," said he, "you will hear him." So on the next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp. They entered the audience hall with the military tribunes and the prominent men of the city. Then, at the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. And Festus said, "King Agrippa and all who are present with us, you see this man about whom the whole Jewish people petitioned me, both in Jerusalem and here, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. But I found that he had done nothing deserving death. And as he himself appealed to the emperor, I decided to go ahead and send him. But I have nothing definite to write to my lord about him. Therefore I have brought him before you all, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that, after we have examined him, I may have something to write. For it seems to me unreasonable, in sending a prisoner, not to indicate the charges against him." Yeah, so that last section there, when Festus is addressing the king, from there till the end of the chapter, he's really, as they're drafting all this up to be able to send Paul to Caesar, he's really trying to look good. Festus is really trying his best to look good, especially before the emperor, so that people will tell the emperor good things about him.
Got it.
Yeah, so in the midst of Festus describing to Agrippa and Bernice the whole situation with Paul, there's something that he brings up very briefly. He doesn't dwell on it very long, but he discusses it, but he brings it up, the fact that this dispute, this disagreement is there between Paul and the Jews. And that is the idea of Jesus being alive, of Jesus' resurrection. You notice in verse 19, Festus is saying that they had certain points of dispute with him among their religion and about a certain Jesus who was dead, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Of course, Festus doesn't know what's going on there. He was not in the area when Jesus was put to death on the cross and then rose from the dead 3 days later. he doesn't know what's going on. He's just a pagan. He's just a Roman pagan going through life. He doesn't know what all this is, what is going on with this.
Yeah.
So he's just hearing this, and he's telling the king and queen that, hey, this is a point of dispute that they're talking about here. I don't understand what any of this means, so I'm just going to keep going, basically. But it shows that kind of, which, as we can recall, back when Paul initially is in front of the council, in front of the people, well, especially in front of the council, he brings up the idea of the resurrection. Now, of course, remember the Sadducees that are in there, they don't believe in the resurrection. They don't believe in resurrection at all. So there was that tension there. So they probably were mad at Paul for starting that whole dispute. And then, yeah. So that's the whole situation there going on. And then chapter 26, we will be hearing Paul's defense before the king.
Oh, good.
Yep. So we've heard bits and pieces of Paul talking here, but we've not heard a long speech out of Paul in a while. So about time that we heard another speech coming out of
Here
Paul.
it comes.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So that is that on chapter 25. Any other questions or comments about any of what we studied tonight?
No, good information. That was good.
Yes,
I'm glad.
very good.
I'm glad you liked it. All right. So thank you all so much for joining me tonight, and have a good
Thank you,
rest of
Sarah.
Yep.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yep, my pleasure.
And
Gotta
Pastor, good luck. Pastor, good luck with your new computer.
Yeah, I'm gonna need it. It's gonna cost me $1,000.
Oh my.
You should get good training on that.
I'm paying a little extra for them to come to my home and put together for me.
It's worth it.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Well, say hi to Mara. Hope she's doing okay.
Yep.
Good. Okay.
God be
Till
with you all.
next week.
See you next week, Sarah. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Bye.